Wherever you are in the world, welcome to another edition of My Take on China, and this time I'm talking about how I know I'm right, or at least why I'm glad that I am. There's hope for me yet. It's clear the US, or at least many factions or people in the USA, don't really like me. A lot of people hate what I stand for, and they aren't afraid to say so either on Twitter or YouTube, but I'm reassured that I'm on the right side of history. When I see comments such as these on my YouTube feed, and believe me, this is not the only one, this is just the one I happened to see when I was thinking about this particular topic, I know there are people who hate what I stand for. In this case, this respondent has managed to fit in almost every incorrect cliché about China into a very short response, and deserves credit for at least being able to do that. I did respond, and in my response I couldn't help but raise the sarcasm level. What a great response, I said. You've managed to hit all the cliches in just a few short lines. Bit of praise there. And you have no idea how entertaining this kind of comment is to intelligent people. I don't mean I'm on the right side of history when I say there is no Uyghur genocide, Taiwan is part of China, no one in China is going to steal your organs, or we won't be arbitrarily detained for being a spy, unless of course we were spying when we were detained. These are facts. They've been proven time and time again, but despite being proven, they're yet to be accepted as true by the likes of Savior MZ or MZ. No, the right side of history is the one that regards people such as Martin Luther King, who was once so despised by the US establishment, but then became such a hero that they've dedicated a public holiday to him. Or Malcolm X, who was hated by law enforcement and the conservative white government of the day, but is now adored by so many that he's had books, articles, and even movies dedicated to his legacy. There's even an article written by Barack Obama about him. That's how important he is now. Moving abroad, we can see Nelson Mandela, who was called a terrorist by people in the US government and the intelligence community too. But now he's hailed as a savior of democracy. And this is why I know there's hope for me yet. Because the US always turns its villains into heroes. Eventually they do that. Even the dreaded Redskins, the derogatory term for Native Americans, has now been turned into a naughty word. Everything the US once stood for is now wrong, and everything they stand for now will be wrong in the future. Because I'm against the mainstream media, I am now a villain. Because I disagree with almost everything, probably everything, Blinken and Biden say, and I disagreed with everything that their predecessors Trump and Pompeo said. That makes me a villain today in the USA. But I know once the dust settles and the US is ready to accept that China actually is what China says it is, and that China does what China says it will do, and most importantly, China doesn't do what all the US experts and their paid think tanks and media keep saying they will do, either economically collapse or militarily invade Taiwan, then the vast majority of people will look back in time and say, did you see this guy's articles or his videos on YouTube? He was right all along. What would really worry me more is if I was wrong now. McCarthy was wrong. He was embarrassed, censured by his colleagues, and died in disgrace. It's not often remembered that he was formally condemned by his Senate colleagues for conduct contrary to Senate traditions, especially now that we're in a new era of McCarthyism. But eventually this will come out, and for the second time in modern history, people will look back and wonder why we were so misled into believing such outrageous lies about communism. I'd also worry if the US supported me as a friend. They did that to Saddam Hussein, and look what happened to him. They touted Osama bin Laden as a hero when he fought valiantly against the Russians. Something else that's less well known about Osama bin Laden is that he tried to raise an army to fight Saddam Hussein during the annexation of Kuwait. he still shared a common enemy with the American administration and could so easily have been one of their best allies in the Middle East. But then in 2011, they murdered him. And then there was the time when Muammar Gaddafi went from being a friend to such an evil enemy that Hillary Clinton so famously celebrated his brutal murder on television. So I'm very pleased that the US don't see me as their friend. And when it comes to China, I know I'm right. And this isn't my own arrogance speaking. This is my experience of having lived, worked, traveled, and studied in China for the last 2 decades. I arrived here in 2004, and except for short holidays, I've never left the country. I've been in Xinjiang several times. I know others who have too. We know the truth. I've been in Hong Kong so many times I can't count. And I know hundreds of Hong Kongers, both there and here living on the mainland. I also know foreigners who lived there through the 2019 protests. And so I have a pretty good picture of what really happened there. I don't think I'm right. I know I am. What makes me more convinced is that almost everyone who tells me I'm wrong has either never set foot in China, or at least not recently, or they have a job that requires them to tell me I'm wrong. And here's the real sting in the tail for them. The people they cite when they tell me I'm wrong either haven't been here at all or are funded to maintain the narrative. And we all know who the funders are. Knowing I'm right puts me in the same category as Mandela, who was right. There's hardly a sane person in the world who doesn't agree he was in the right. It puts me in the same category as Martin Luther King, who was so despised by the establishment that, according to the documentary MLK FBI, they tasked the FBI with destroying him. It puts me in the same category as Malcolm X, who the FBI so disliked what he represented that he was assassinated. And when he was, they framed innocent men for the murder and covered up the truth. They also failed to disclose in court that there were undercover officers in the audience who witnessed his murder, so the real murderers and their backers got away with murder, literally. I don't mean this to put myself in the same league as these great people. I've mentioned it, that's all. It's clearly untrue that I'm not in their league. But what this does is point to the fact that the US has a history of persecuting people who they then turn into heroes, and at the same time, a record of using people they can later vilify as villains. I'd rather be one of the people they persecute than one of the people they hail as a hero. And all of this tells me one thing. I don't need to change, they do. And if history is any guide, as soon as it suits them, they will. I know they will, because they've done it every single time in the past. That's all for now, and I hope to catch you again on the next time. See you next time I do a Jerry's Take on China. Bye for now.